Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and today we're going to take a look at a newcomer to the PC case market. This is Adata's XPG Invader. Keep watching to find out more. Okay, so today we're going to take a look at the newcomer to the PC market. This is Adata's XPG Invader, a new mid to high-end case from those people. And we're going to take a look at it and see how good it actually is, see if it's worth the money. Currently, the suggested retail price for this in the UK is around about the £70 mark, so kind of in that area where there is an awful lot of competition, especially for the enthusiasts. So let's take a look at it and see what it can offer us and see what we can do with it. So first of all, let's go through and let's do a tour around the various sides, top and bottom, all that kind of stuff. So let's start off with the front. So this is going to be an obvious choking point for some, no pun intended. Actually, yeah, pun was intended. Full front panel. So for a lot of people, they like to see the mesh, like to see an airflow. Well, in this particular unit, this isn't a problem. This front panel is completely removable. It's just a magnetic panel on the front. So it's nice and easy to remove, nice and easy to clean if you need to get into behind it. And this panel is actually very heavy, very solid indeed, and it's going to do some serious noise dampening, I think. So this is actually going to be significantly quieter than cases with an open design. We don't have to worry too much about filtration because we've got this really nice filter on the front. This is a very, very fine mesh filter, which is actually going to filter particles much better than some of the mesh fronted PC cases, which have slightly bigger holes in them. Obviously, you're getting much better airflow, but unfortunately, you're getting a bit more dust coming into your PC as well. So if you're using a side panel or tempered glass, then sooner or later it is going to start getting a bit mucky and a bit dusty. And also your sensitive components like your graphics card and all that kind of stuff, eventually you're going to start getting caked up with dust, which is never a good thing. But this front panel is going to be great. It's going to filter all that, and best of all, it's super easy to remove and super easy to clean. Again, following on from the front panel design, we've got a magnetic clamp or clasp, and it's got magnets in 6 areas, so it holds it on nice and tight to the chassis. And it'll be nice and easy to get a vacuum on it or to give it a clean under the sink or whatever it is. Moving on to other parts of the cooling, so as you can probably see already, at the front here we've got space for 3 120mm fans, or alternatively 2 140mm fans. There are 2 fans included in the box, which are these XPG rated fans. Personally, I would have liked to have seen the case possibly with more fans, being it is in that kind of £70 price point where there are some other premium brands available already. A little bit of extra value from the fans would have been very nice to see. But actually having some fans at all is a good thing. Primarily this case is designed at gamers and enthusiasts who I would possibly imagine have got their own setups already, or have got RGB fans or whatever it is already that they've already got in mind when they're thinking of building in this case. So I don't think it's going to be a big problem. If you're a new kid on the block and you're trying to build your first PC, then obviously do take into account that you may potentially need additional fans to get this as cool as you would like it to be. But saying that, with 2 fans included, one at the front, one at the rear, you can have some pretty decent airflow anyway. So plenty of room for ventilation up front, and again with this mesh on, it just fits in there really nicely, snaps into place, no problems at all. Actually, when you put the front panel on, there is a really nice gap between the actual front panel and the fans themselves and the filtration. So there's a good 25 to 30mm gap running top to bottom both sides, so airflow isn't going to be a problem at all. You do have a slight restriction because it's obviously coming in at a 90-degree angle, so you do lose some of that static air pressure, but it's in no way going to choke it like it would in something like the older master case light boxes that I reviewed a long time ago, which were absolutely horrendous. So this has actually got a lot going for it. So normally at this point we'd go to the front panel, remove the front panel, take a look inside, but in this particular instance we're going to start off with the back panel, because the back panel is actually quite an interesting prospect. So all of this is on thumb screws as well, so nice and easy to remove, and it looks like the manufacturing process, they haven't over tightened them, so they can actually come off relatively easy without getting a screwdriver out. So looking at the back panel, we've got this nice mesh on the back which helps for ventilation. You're probably thinking, why would you want ventilation on the back panel? Well, there's a good reason for that, and that is because if we look at the back panel, or the back side of it rather, you can see here we've got another section where we can put more cooling fans. Now again, this is potentially filtered if you wish it to be. There is another magnetic filter attached on the back, so again, magnetic filters are a theme throughout this build pretty much. So here we've got room for a 240mm all-in-one cooler, or alternatively 2 120mm fans, however you see fit. You can actually get a cooler on the back and fans on the front without it impeding on the fans which are installed in the front. There is enough room to do that. Obviously do check with your manufacturer of your AIOs and your fans just to make sure that they're not overly sized or anything like that, but you shouldn't find any problems at all. Now, in fact, if you want to see some of the possible layouts of this, if you go to the Adata site and look at the specs on this case, you can see some of the builds they've done in it already, and it looks absolutely fantastic, and it's completely decked out with coolers and fans. So pretty much the bank balance or the sky is the limit for this, or however creative you can get in your own mind. But anyway, so plenty of cooling. For this part of it, for me, is slightly odd, if I'm completely honest, because you've got this filter on the back, so that would generally mean that you're trying to filter incoming air, whereas you'd have the fans drawing in air from there and also air from the front, so you'd have effectively either 4 or 5 fans drawing air in from the front and then exhausting possibly 2 out the top, 1 out the back. Whether or not that's going to be the best situation for airflow, I don't know. Possibly, maybe slightly overkill, but again, we will be doing a build in this coming up very shortly. I'm waiting for some parts to come in, but as soon as we do, we'll be doing a build in this and getting some airflow results and seeing how well it actually performs. And this case actually may become my daily driver, but we will see. So further parts around the back, we've got a RGB controller on the top, which all the wiring terminates at the bottom here. I've tidied some of this up just for the review purposes, but essentially coming from the RGB controller on the top, you've got options on here for a pass-through, and also there's 2 additional addressable RGB outputs and also a 4-pin RGB as well. So you've got RGB and addressable RGB all from the built-in controller, which is in a slightly odd place. I don't like having the buttons at the top next to the reset buttons, because the last thing you want to be doing is reaching over to change your RGB lighting and accidentally pressing the reset button. So for me, having the controls there is a little bit of a no-no, and it takes a little bit of muscle memory to get used to pressing the right button, or just change your RGB before you actually turn your PC off or on or whatever it is you're doing, just to be careful. Anyway, so this is Adata's own XPG combo RGB controller, which is built in, which is actually a very nice thing, because we have got a little bit of RGB which is built into the bottom here, which we'll have a look at in a little bit when we fire it up. But there is a little bit of RGB going on, which is really nice. It's not completely decked out with it, it's not like a Christmas tree, it's just got a nice subtle front panel, very similar to the Phanteks P400, where you've got a little bit of RGB but not too much, but you can expand on it very easily with the included controller and cables. So moving further down, this is where we keep the 3.5-inch drives, or 2.5-inch drives if you see fit. The drive bay itself is actually removable, or you can actually move it forward and back. So if you're not going to put a radiator and some extra fans in the front, then you can just slide that forward a bit to give you a little bit more room in this area for the power supply. Again, on the front, you can put in there a 360 AIO or a 360mm rad and 3 120mm fans. There is enough room in there for that. So again, you can go completely crazy with this cooling wise. It's very, very flexible. Moving around to the cabling, so the cabling is all nice black sleeve cabling, so it all fits in really nicely. The only thing I would say is where this case comes out a little bit here on this back panel, you do get extra height for your CPU cooler, so this will accept CPU coolers up to 170mm, so that is actually pretty big for a case like this. But you do lose some of your cable management room on the back here, so depending how you decide to route your cables, and obviously depending how you decide to use this area for fans, you may have to consider your wiring on the back here. Now there are limited areas where you can actually tie cables to. That is one of the downsides of this case that I can see at the moment, that there aren't a great deal of tie-off points. So you either need to get a little bit creative with cable ties, or maybe get those little sticky fixers which you can stick on in various areas and attach cables that way. Again, not a deal breaker. There are points to tie cables down, so you've got one there, one there, one there, 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 there. They are dotted around, but there's just not as many cable management points as I would have liked to have seen with the case of this price point. Power supply, nice and easy to do. Actually, filtration wise, we've got a little bit of filtration here on the bottom, so if you are going to be putting anything down here, there's room for air to escape. If you do go for a positive pressure setup, like the 5 fans on the front all pushing air in, there's holes and ventilations everywhere, so it's going to keep the air moving throughout the system. Power supply wise, you can fit in there pretty much any power supply you want. You've got a ton of room there. Also it's filtered underneath, so that's all nice and good. Nice big cutout here for most motherboards, so if you're accessing, putting on a water cooler or some kind of custom cooling loop, whatever it may be, nice, you've got access to here, so you shouldn't have any problems at all. There's some pass-through cables for your extended ATX cables, for power supplies, for the motherboard power, all that kind of stuff. One thing I would say when you're doing a build in this is one thing I did notice. The power supply, once it's in, actually blocks off some of the routing holes for what I would assume would be your either USB or your HD audio ports in this bottom corner. So do think about that before you put your power supply in. It's not the end of the world because the power supply itself is actually on its own little bracket, so you can just undo the 4 screws, pull it out, then push it back in. So if you need to route the cables, I would ideally do it just before you put the power supply in, especially for those things like the HD audio and the USBs, like I said. So let's move around now to the main side of the window, or the viewing side. So we've got this 4mm tempered glass, which is actually held on very nicely actually with, there's some clips on the front, or on the bottom, however you look at it, and you just push it back slightly and it unlatches. There's a latch on the bottom, or I'm not sure, some sort of clip, so that clips on nicely, so the panel itself isn't going anywhere. So this is the internal part of the PC case. As you can see, you've got a little bit of XPG logo on there. Some people may like that, some people may not. Again, because this is a satin matte black, if you don't like it, that is going to be really easy to cover up with some paint, or just put another sticker over it. AMD, Intel, Nvidia, whatever you want to put on there, you can cover it up quite easily. It's not going to be too difficult to do. Again, it would have been nice to have seen that in maybe a white colour or something, but just to make it slightly more neutral. But again, not the end of the world at all. On the back, you've got the space for a 120mm fan, you've got your I/O cutouts, you've got your 7 removable PCI or PCI Express card blanking plates. Again, they're all ventilated as well, so extra ventilation there. On this bottom basement area, you've got area for 2.5-inch drives, so whether that's mechanical or SSD, you can use those in that place there. Or if you want to, you can just remove those all together, giving you a slightly cleaner look. You've also got access there to your cables, etc. There's an additional hole here, which I really appreciate. And this is for your graphics card to get power supply to, or possibly for some kind of water cooling setup. But essentially, for me, that would be for your PCI Express power supply. So you can run your cables up here and straight into a graphics card, which for me actually cleans up the whole look, and I do like this a lot. It's one of those simple things that a lot of manufacturers overlook these days. They tend to put sort of grommets and all this kind of stuff here, but then you have to worry about how to get this big graphics card cable around. Whereas this area here, straight into a graphics card, is going to look super neat, super smooth. Very, very nice indeed. So moving around slightly more, this is the hard drive area here. Again, that is completely removable. So we've got a big section here, which gives you a lot of space if you wanted to put a large reservoir or something like that in there. Again, entirely up to you, very flexible. Got the 2 fans on the front here, which is included, which we've gone over already. One thing I'm not entirely keen on is underneath here where the I/O panel routes through to the back. This section is all completely open, so the cables are slightly visible. Again, you'd have to look pretty hard to find them, but they are visible to some extent. It would have been nice to have something like either a plastic cover or some kind of shielding just to clean that area up a little bit. But having said that, again, not the end of the world. Now moving on to the top. On the top we've got a removable magnetic filter. Again, following on the tradition. Lots of removable magnetic stuff everywhere. Room on the top for 2 120mm fans, or again, a 240mm radiator, all in one, that kind of stuff. And it is actually offset from the back of the case by at least, I would say, it's getting on for 50mm. So if you've got any motherboard stuff going on there where you need to plug in stuff, it is not going to impede you. They've really thought about that, and there's a lot of room there available to get your fingers in to do rewiring. 8-pin plugs for your power supply, for your graphics card, for your motherboard, whatever it may be. You've got lots of room there to work with, which is a really nice thing to see. So motherboard wise, you can fit in here mini ITX, micro ATX and full size ATX. Unfortunately, no extended extended ATX because of this section here. So this is kind of your cutoff point. So standard size ATX is going to be your limit on that. So if you are considering a build in this, do make sure your motherboard matches up to the sizes available on there. And again, I'll put all the details of that kind of stuff in the description below so you can check out for yourself. Now the pillars themselves have all been pre-installed and are in there pretty well. The centralized one has a mounting lug or a location lug, which I actually really appreciate, because when you put a motherboard in, it's nice to have that one just to match up and to make sure that everything is in place. All the lugs and all the mounting pillars have all been finished in the same satin matte black, so you don't have kind of brass things poking out here, there and everywhere, which again, very nice to see. So I think that's pretty much for the interior side. So let's have a closer look at the top section. So on the top section, as you can see, this is the ventilation on the top, and there's a massive offset there, so motherboard wise you can have no problems at all. Cooler wise it's going to be a piece of cake to install stuff on there. The power button we've got in the shape of a play button, which is a kind of nice thing to see, a little bit different. Next to that you've got your RGB button, which cycles through RGB colours, or you can actually turn the RGB off, or if you press and hold it, it goes into sound activated mode, which takes a pickup from the HD audio connector on the motherboard and will then flash the LEDs in time to whatever sounds are coming out of your PC, which is pretty cool. Next to that, unfortunately, you've got the, sorry, I had that run the wrong way. That is the reset button, that is the RGB button. You can see where that's going to go very wrong for me at some point in the very near future. Next to that is the combination headset jack port, so mic and earphones all in one. I'm not entirely convinced on that. I suppose that's kind of good for the modern generation, but there's still some of us who still like to having two separate ports for your headset and your microphone, or microphone earphones, whatever it may be. Yeah, that is starting to become a more popular thing these days. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. I don't think I'm quite sold on it quite yet. Next to that, we've got two USB 3.0 ports, and I'm just going to double check. Yeah, that is quite a nice touch actually. Normally those would be color coded blue, so they'd stand out like a sore thumb, but they've actually got the black plastic inside them, even though there are USB 3.0 ports. So yeah, that's quite a nice aesthetic touch. I quite like that. I didn't notice that before, so that's very nice. Right, so we looked at the top, so let's take a look at the bottom. So moving on to the bottom of the case, so we've got two removable filters. Like I said before, one here for the power supply and one at the front here in the kind of hard drive area. Although I don't think yes there is another area there. Yes, there is. You can actually add another fan behind there. I've just realised. So if you remove that hard drive cage, you can actually put a 120mm fan in there. So yeah, there's fans everywhere in this thing. So what are we looking at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 fans you can get in this thing. That's a crazy amount of cooling. Anyway, so the feet, again, the feet on this side are actually integrated into the kind of the glass holder, which is kind of nice. And we've got some pretty decent rubberized feet on there to minimize your vibrations and all that kind of stuff. Now at the front here, this is our RGB section, or addressable RGB section. So when this is on and you've got it connected, then this will actually illuminate if you so wish. It is on a SATA connector, as no doubt lots of you will be very happy to know. We've got no Molex connectors in this case whatsoever. So if you want to use that, you can do, but being that it's quite a stealthy thing, if you're not into your RGB, then just leave it, forget it, ignore it. It's not even there, which for me, flexibility wise is great. Some of these cases, you've got the RGB strips on the sides or whatever, and if they're not illuminated, they look like they're not on. So it kind of destroys the aesthetic. But with this, because of where it is, nice and stealthy, if you've got it on a desk or something, it's going to reflect and have that kind of underlit look, like the kind of Japanese cars, the racing cars, all that kind of stuff, the Fast and Furious kind of look. But if you don't want it on, just leave it off. It's not a problem at all. So let's turn it on and we'll go through some of the RGB features and then we'll wrap up with my conclusions. Okay, so final thoughts, and we'll take a look at the RGB. So RGB button on the front. Now I better make sure I'm pressing the right one because we've been there before. So just press it once and you get the static red, press it again, you get static green, blue, purple, I'm guessing, a kind of greeny colour, blue, orange, pale green, and then we go into our kind of one of our unicorn puke modes. So quite a nice look on there, and you'll probably see from some of the B-roll, which I'll be adding to this, that you can actually extend it, like I said earlier. So you've got RGB connectors in there, so you can add on RGB strips or additional RGB fans, all that kind of stuff. And actually with the extra LED strips on there, for me personally, that kind of makes it kind of seals the deal for me for the internal wise. This at the bottom for me is very discreet. I kind of like that. I don't really like it all over the front and loads of fans and stuff. This looks kind of posh, almost. It's probably the wrong word, but it looks elegant. Elegant, that's a great word. Elegant, that's the one I'm going to go with. This is an elegant solution, so you haven't got all that kind of garish stuff going on. Some people do prefer that, like obviously in my case behind, you got fans and lights and everything everywhere. It is a complete kind of carousel. Whereas this is very, very discreet, subtle, but it looks kind of nice as well at the same time. And you've got the flow-in RGB, various colours, and it just looks very nice. It's not totally in your face, but if you want it to be in your face, you can connect up the extra features, extra LED strips, all that kind of stuff, really go to town on it. Now, the sound to music thing, if you press and hold the button, it kind of acts in two ways, so it actually dims the buttons as well. So that RGB is still on, and you'll probably see from some of the other B-roll I've done, you can just about make it out. It's very subtle. So if you don't connect up your HD audio and you don't have the audio pass-through, then you can have this very, very subtle RGB. So you've got two lighting effects you can choose from there. And again, if you want to, you can go the whole hog. Let's turn that back on. So press and hold, full brightness. So if you don't like it at all, you can either choose to disconnect it or go through and cycle it until it's off. Or just don't connect it at all, which might be easier for some. But again, you're probably not going to be buying a case with RGB if you're not planning to use some elements of RGB. Anyway, I'm going on far too much. So what are my thoughts and what do I think of it? So what do I think of it first of all? As this is the first case to come out of the Adata, the XPG range, I think they've done a fantastic job. There's a few things I think they could have possibly done better. Possibly a little bit more wiggle room for cable management in the back would have been nice to see. Again, they've done a reasonably good job of that. The fans, I would have preferred to have seen some RGB fans in there, maybe just one, even if it was just at the back, just so you could have a little bit of RGB at the front, a little bit at the back, straight out of the box. For me, that would have been a killer option, in my opinion. But again, let me know what you think. But other than that, I don't think I can fault it. Everything else works and is designed for high-end gaming and high-end systems in general. The magnetic front, the removable filters, all that kind of stuff. This is great. This genuinely is great. I really do like to see this. The solidness of the panel, the ease of cleaning for these, how well it's going to keep the system clean is brilliant. The removable top filter, and with it all being spaced out and shifted across so you can get a radiator in there without impeding on your motherboard or perhaps impeding on whatever other connections you've got going on up there, is a really, really nicely thought out design element. The glass that holds itself on the clamps on the side, again, a nice little touch, just makes life a little bit easier and it makes it a little bit less dangerous when you're taking it apart. Build quality, can't fault at all. There's no sharp edges whatsoever. Everything's really nicely rolled over. The logo on the side, not everyone's cup of tea, but again, not really a deal breaker. So yeah, I think they've done a fantastic job, and it'll be interesting to see how the build goes in it. But judging from my initial looks and from my experience of building PCs overall, I can see this as being pretty easy to do. There's nothing which stands out to me that I'm thinking, how am I going to get around that? It all seems to work. So yeah, hopefully it's going to do really well. So again, let me know what you think of this in the comments section below. But in the meantime, I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To. This has been the Adata XPG Invader, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.